Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator, and welcome back to episode number 2 of our deep dive for the PMDG 777. Today we will be focusing on getting the aircraft pushed back and engine started ready for taxi, so stick around. If you are interested in acquiring any of my Overkills tutorial guides from Microsoft Flight Simulator, or simply interested in supporting the channel, please consider joining us on Patreon. Patreon subscribers level tier 2 and above have access to all of my guides, as well as any future releases that come down the road. Patreon link can be found in the description below.
Overkill simulations, watch us as we fly. Overkill simulations, a thrill will never die.
Alright, so let's let the games begin here. Let me minimize that so it's out of my way. There we go. Alright, so last time we ended with the legs page being up here. And so now we are going to continue on. We're going to go and enter in the wind data. The wind data is really crucial because it's what's going to give you the most fuel efficient of flight. So we're going to go to route data. We're going to go to wind data request. Now I accidentally already did this. I thought I was recording and I wasn't. And so we're just going to do it again. It's not going to hurt anything. You're going to see wind data requesting. And I believe it pulls us directly from the sim. And we're just going to sit here and wait a second. There we go. And we're going to hit wind data load. And then execute. And that'll put our winds in. And that part's done. Then we're going to go over to our VNAV page. And you're going to make sure that your speed transition altitudes are set. So in the United States, pretty much just about everywhere we are required to be at 250 knots at 10,000 or below. We're not allowed to exceed 250. However, if you're taking off from a very high altitude airport, you may want to increase this. So in that case, you might do like 250 at 13,000. Transition altitude, you're going to want to make sure that this is right for the region you're flying. For example, if you're in the United Kingdom, I believe it is 3,000 feet instead of 18,000 as it is here in the United States. But that's pretty much all we have to worry about with the VNAV page for now. Now let's get into the flows. So I'm going to take us back to the legs page for now. We're going to step upstairs. And for the overhead panel, we're going to go down, top, down, top, down, top, down, top, down. And all of this information is in the guide. So let's go ahead and get rolling. Ataroos are on. Asymmetric thrust asymmetric compensation is set to auto. Primary flight computers are guarded and disconnect light is extinguished. In-flight entertainment and passenger seats are set to on. Cabin utilities, so coffee machines, etc., are turned on. We want to make sure, obviously, battery is on. MSFS Gen needs to be on. Left and right bus ties are set to the auto position. External powers are both on. Left and right generator controls are set to on, and the backup generators are on as well. Drive switches are in drive and guarded. Pretty much anything with a guarded switch you really have no reason to ever touch. Okay. Coming up here, emergency exit lights are armed. Anything with a black guarded switch will automatically put the switch into the desired position by simply closing the guard. So simply closing that will automatically force it to the armed position. Service interphone is turned off. Passenger oxygen, again, on and guarded. Window heats now coming on. Ram air turbine is off and guarded. Again, this is one of those, for those who don't know, the ram air turbine is used as an emergency power source should all power be lost to the cockpit. You basically push this button, it drops a little fan out from underneath the aircraft. As the aircraft spinning through, or flying through the air, it forces the fan to spin, causes it to generate some electricity. You don't ever want to engage this as it requires ground crew in order to stow it once again. Okay, C1 and C2 electric hydraulic pumps are off. And we want to make sure that left and right generator switch, or left and right hydraulic switch, left and right engine hydraulic switches are on. Gosh, I can't talk. All of your hydraulic demand switches should be off at this time. Passenger seats and no electronic devices should be set to the auto position. However, if you know that you are in bad weather or turbulent conditions, you'll want to force the seatbelt signs to the on position, as above 10,000 feet, the aircraft will automatically disengage those signs should it be in the auto position. Internal lights set as desired, landing lights and nose lights set to the off position. Coming up top, you want to make sure that all of your discharge lights are extinguished and the discharge handle is pushed in and closed. ECC engine modes, or engine ECC modes, excuse me, left and right should be set to the norm position. Engine start switches, both left and right, to norm, and auto start set to on. Jettison switches closed and guarded, and fuel transfer switch set or pushed in, basically set to auto. And the arm light is off. All fuel pumps should be off, crossfeed switches are off, and center fuel tanks are off. Anti-ice should be set to the auto position. If you are already in icing condition, so you are negative 10 degrees Celsius, as well as visible moisture, you want to make sure that at engine start that these are automatically forced to on. Wing anti-ice will not do anything while there is weight on wheels, so as long as the aircraft is on the ground, the wing anti-ice does not function. Coming down to our lights, we want to make sure our nav light is turned on, runway turn-off lights are off, taxi lights off, strobe lights off. Indicator lights, you can go ahead and do a test if you wish. It will illuminate every single light in the cockpit, so you can do that and peek around if you want. All right, let's go ahead and get to the other side. Equipment cooling should be set to auto. Gasper fans are on. Circulatory fans should be on. Flight deck temperatures, for the most part, leave in the flight deck and cabin temperatures should be set in the center position, which is basically auto. Left and right pack should be auto as well, and trim air should also be on. Left, center, and right circulation or isolation valves should be set to auto. Left and right engine bleed switches should be set to on, and APU bleed should be set to auto. Pressurization should be set to auto, both forward and aft, and you want to make sure the landing elevation pressurization is pushed in. Notice that it pops out. You want to push it in, make sure that it's in the auto position. All right. That pretty much takes care of the overhead panel, so let's go ahead and step on down to the MCP. Starting with the first officer side, you want to make sure, oops, I didn't realize I had those on. Flight director should be turned on. Your engine page you typically want displayed at this time. Flight path vector, if you guys watch real carefully, it's going to be a little hard to see here, but here, we'll zoom in real quick and then zoom back out. So notice right here, there is a flight path vector there. If I turn it off, okay, it goes away, and there's the circle. The flight path vector is basically wherever that little circle is, that's where the aircraft's endpoint is going to be. So no matter where the flight path indicator or flight control surface lines are, wherever that little circle is, so for example, if that little circle is on a mountain, you're going to hit the mountain. Okay, so make sure that you make some adjustments. All right. So we want the flight path vector to be on. Set your barometric pressure. Altimeter pressure is set, and at this point you want to turn your VORs left and right on and set your navigation display range. I usually do 20 or 40 until I have departed the airfield. You want to make sure your display is set to map, and then now we're going to step on over here to the right side and check the first officer oxygen and make sure that the setting is set to 100%, but this isn't even modeled yet. Make sure your window is closed as well. You can open them, so keep that in mind. And let's see here, where are we? Your heating and lighting switch for the first officer side, set as desired. Alternate navigation display sources should be set to off. Inboard display should be set to the MFD. If you happen to switch it off to something else, for example the ECAS, notice go back to MFD. If you ever need to move it back to the nav position, just simply go nav and back to MFD, and it'll automatically always select that one. Your override switches should all be guarded and off. Landing gear handle should be down. Alternate gear switch should be, or alternate gear activation switch should be in the guarded position. And at this point, you can set your auto brakes to RTO, or rejected takeoff. And you should get the ECAS warning as well, or alert letting you know. So now, let's go ahead and go to our checklist page. And we now have the pre-flight checklist. So this is where things can get a little bit tricky, is with this damn parking brake. So I wanted to make sure that this actually happened. Oxygen, we've tested, and all the flight instruments have been set. However, notice that we did actually miss one, and I think I skipped a page is what happened. Okay, I have to remember that that happens. That is bound to a key I don't want it bound to. I need to change that. Anyway, there we go. We want to make sure our speed brakes are retracted. I didn't mean to click that. So from the checklist page, you want to hit resets and reset all. That will reset our checklists. Okay, because we're going to be using those later. The display alternate control switch should be guarded, and display brightnesses should be set as desired as well. Moving on down the first officer side for the radio, set your radios as desired. If you are using things like VATSIM, you're going to want to make sure that you have the correct radios set. So your left radio, and normally we set it something like this. There we go. Okay. Now I set these up. You guys have to forgive me. It's almost midnight here at the time of this recording. So you'll do both sides, but we should have gone down this side first. So forgive me for that. Anyway, weather radar you leave alone. You want to make sure the third radio panel, the high frequency VHF, says data is tuned accordingly. And the observer radio can be set as desired. I'm not obviously worried about that. Make sure your trims are all centered. Rudder trim is centered. Okay. And obviously we check the fire discharge handles, but you could check them again. And then set your right side radios up as well. Transponder should be set in the standby position. All right, and then moving all the way to the back of the pedestal, you want to make sure the evacuation switch is down and guarded. And you want to make sure your floor lights and aisle floodlights are set as desired as well. All right, now let's move to the captain flows. So again, coming back up to the MCP, if you have them separate, you would set your barometric pressure as desired. Again, VORs left and right. Flight path vector, again, make sure you turn on. That time you guys hopefully saw that come on. Set your display range as desired. Flight directors set to on. Auto throttles should be armed. Autopilot disengage switch should be up. Bank angle limiter should be set to auto. And set your runway heading. In our case, we're departing LAX on 24 left, which is a runway heading of 251 degrees. There we go. Okay, and then set our initial climb altitude. According to the charts, we need to be above 10,000 feet at Clipper, which is our first waypoint past our vectors. So we'll basically take it off, and then we'll be manually steering the aircraft over to Clipper. And at Clipper, we want to be above 10,000. And our next waypoint target is 13,000, so that's what we're going to set as our initial target altitude, simulating ATC clearance for that. Okay, and then stepping on down once again to the left side, you would check the captain's oxygen, verify that we have oxygen pressure. Once again, set your heating and lighting as desired. Your alternate display source switches should be off and guarded. And once again, let's see, where are we? There we go. Inboard display, you want to set to the MFD. Heading reference should be set to norm. You can set either norm or true, but basically for normal operations, we'll be leaving that as norm. The integrated standby primary or flight display, you want to make sure the altimeter is set according to the rest of the displays, in which case we have it synced. Okay, coming down to the control stack, the alternate trim tab should be in the neutral position, which is what they are here. Dang it, I did it again. It's every time that I stop the recording. Let me actually fix that real quick, guys. All right, there. Now I can start and stop my recording without having to worry about that. So we wanted to make sure that the speed brakes are retracted, just like we did before. Throttles are idle, reverses are down, flaps are retracted. Okay, now it's coming time to set the parking brake. Now there's a couple different things that could happen. We're not going to experience it because, as you can see, we have accumulator pressure. However, if you run into a situation where the parking brake won't set, it is very likely what you're going to see is that the accumulator pressure is down in the yellow. If that happens, you're going to go up top, turn on the C1 electric pump. So if we turn that on right now and we come back downstairs, you can see the accumulator pressure rising. You would turn it on, depress your brakes, depending on how you have this set, and I'll show you guys in just a second, but you have simple or realistic. But you would if you have it on realistic, you would depress the foot pedal, the toe brakes, pull the parking brake, and then release the toe brakes, and you'll be fine. And then come upstairs and shut the hydraulic pump off. Okay, now let me show you guys where you can set that. For simple, you literally just pull it. We can pull it now. So there it is. Parking brakes are set. Okay, let's go ahead and do a recall, but let me show you guys where you set that setting. So we're going to go to menu, PMDG setup, options, simulation, and I believe it's like one of the last pages. There it is. Yep, 8 of 8. Parking brake. I currently have it set to simple. It's just easier for the sake of making the guide. But I believe it's set to realistic by default. Okay, I could be mistaken. It might be simple by default, but anyway, I don't remember. But that's where you would change that. So again, realistic. Make sure you have accumulator pressure. Okay, depress the toe brakes, pull the parking brake, release the toe brakes. Simple, just pull the parking brake. Okay, all right. So let's go back to our legs page, and let's keep going with the guide. Okay, and coming back to the control stack, our stabilizer control switches should be set to the norm position and guarded. Fuel cutoff switches, both left and right, should be in the cutoff position. And the alternate flap selector should be closed and guarded, and setting should be set to off. All right, so now with that in mind, we are ready to complete the onboard checklist for the pre-flight. So we're going to come up to the MCP. Let's go ahead and recall again. Cancel that. Let's go to our checklist page. And let's tap it one more time. There we go. Because normally that would be blank if you hadn't done what I did. And so now, let's talk about a few things on the checklist. Notice that parking brake and the fuel control switches are already checked. It's because the system already knows that the parking brake is engaged and that the fuel control switches are in cutoff. So it's asking us, did we check the oxygen? We did, and are all flight instruments set? So we have our altitude set, we have our altimeter set, we have our heading set, and we even have our initial speed set. So that checklist is now completed. All right. So now it's time for the pre-start. So for the pre-start, this part isn't actually in the guide. This is sort of going to be one of those you guys sort of have to know, because I don't always do this. Is why my objective is to show you how to start the aircraft, not necessarily how to manage the ground crew. So obviously, if you have things like the jetway connected, you want to release the jetway. Okay, so we got the jetway. Okay, and we're going to talk about doors in a second, but we could go ahead in here and close all the doors. Okay, and then we'll come back to that here later on. Okay, so next step is to start the APU. So we're going to go overhead, and we're going to just simply click it on over to start, wait for it to go to on. Now we'll have a couple indicators. First big one being on the ECAS. When it's ready, you'll see APU running, so we'll wait for that. All right, so it takes about a minute and a half or so, but now we finally have APU running. And you can hear the fans coming on. Those are the packs coming on, so the air conditioning is now working in the aircraft. Okay, so the other things to watch for, you'll also notice that the left forward pumps have automatically turned on because the APU has been engaged. Make sure that your APU Gen is on, and we'll also see that secondary external power is automatically disconnected when the APU starts. Okay, now moving down to a couple of other things that you can check while we're doing this is if we come on over here and we hit the electric page and we come back down to our center display, you can see APU Gen and you can see the flow. If you don't see APU Gen here, if this green box right up here is not illuminated, that means your APU Gen is off. Okay, so that's a big indicator. Okay, and the other one here is we come back here and go to air. Once again, we can step on down to the center display and you can see APU and you can see the airflow, and you can start monitoring the temperatures of the different parts of the cabin starting to change. Okay, so just a couple ways to go ahead and check that everything is working the way it should. So now while we're here, let's go ahead and continue with the pre-start. We're going to go to FS actions once again. We're going to go to ground connections, and we can now release the ground power as well. Okay, let's return to our legs page for now. Now with the ground power release, you can see the external power has already turned itself off. Okay, and then finally, the other thing that we're going to do is verify that our doors are closed. Okay, so we don't have any indicators that the doors are closed or are open, but one of the things that I do like to do, going back to our door page, FS Actions, go to Doors, and we're going to select Arm All. Okay, and so that basically arms, I believe, the emergency sliders in the event that, or emergency slides, excuse me, in the event that the aircraft needed to be evacuated quickly, they could deploy the slides. All right, so we've moved right around. So now we are at the before start flow. So getting into the flow once again, we're going to come upstairs and we're going to go through a couple things that we've already checked on, but we're just going to double check everything. So stepping on down, we're going to make sure that once again the no electronics and seatbelt signs are in the auto position. We already talked about the conditions. If necessary, seatbelt signs would be on if you know that you're going into a storm, turbulent conditions, etc. Okay, now the next part is the electric hydraulic pumps. You want to do this very specifically in this order. Okay, it's a little weird. It's going to throw you off for a minute, but just bear with me. It is required. So right electric pump goes to the auto position. And then we're going to turn the C1 and C2 electric hydraulic pumps on. The C2 fault light will remain on for a while as it's doing a load test. And then now we can come over here and from left to right turn the other demand pumps on. So auto, auto, and auto. And all of the fault lights should extinguish. All right. Now going over to the fuel pumps here, we want to turn all of our fuel pumps on. Even though the APU automatically started the left pump, notice it doesn't say on. So you want to actually turn it on as well as the other two. If you had fuel in the center tanks, okay, let's step on downstairs again. You would see right up here, fuel in center. Okay, something to that effect. I believe the quote is fuel in center. If you see fuel in center, it means that you have fuel in the center tanks, but the center pumps are not on. So you would need to come upstairs and turn your center pumps on. All right, now as we're getting ready to start the aircraft, we're going to go ahead and turn on our beacon light. We'll now return to the MCP and do a recall. And all you should see is engine shutdown and the TCAS is off, which is exactly what we're expecting to see. With that being said, we're going to move down to the transponder and set it to transponder. Okay. Going back to the MCP, you would turn LNAV and VNAV on. We're going to go ahead and arm those. And now we can go to our checklist page once again and do the before start checklist. So, flight deck door, you know, I actually don't think it is closed. I think I opened it. I did, because I was playing around back there a little while ago. So, again, that's why we have our checklist. Boom. Moving back over here. So the flight deck door is closed and locked. MCP, the V2 speeds, heading tracks, and altitude are all set. Takeoff speeds have been accepted into the FMC. CDU pre-flight has been completed. Trim. We need to set 3.25 units of trim. Notice that we're at 4. Now you can either bind it to something or you can use the electronic trims switches on the yoke. In our case, we're going to do the yoke today because I actually don't have mine plugged in at the moment. So let's bring that up. All right, we're just going to simulate that it did what it's supposed to do, but you would want to engage the trim until it reached our 3.25. For some reason, every single time I try to use the electronic switches on the yoke, it doesn't work for me. I don't know if I have something turned off. I don't know if I messed something up, but it never works for me. And unfortunately, I have my honeycomb unplugged. And that's a whole different bag of worms to why. Anyways, so we're going to simulate that the trim was set, and then taxi and takeoff briefings are checked. The checklist is now complete, and we'll return to the engine page for the engine start. All right, so once again, we're going to come over to our EFB. We're going to go to ground connections and remove the chocks, as the parking brake is now set. And again, you would verify that all the doors have been armed. We already did that, so we're going to skip that particular portion. So now at this point, I'm just going to simulate it, you guys, that we did the pushback. I'm not actually going to go through it. The idea is just to show you. But at this point, you would call your favorite pushback service, pushback toolbar, GSX, whatever it may be, push your aircraft back. And as your aircraft is pushing back, as long as you've got, authorization to start your engines, this is where we would start the engines. So the beautiful part about this aircraft is it's so simple. You don't have to wait. There's no waiting, no nothing. So we're just going to start with the right engine, flip it down to start, move over to, notice you already heard the packs turn off, and just immediately come down to the fuel control and flip it up. And we already have engine rotation. I will say the sounds on this one are phenomenal. Even from inside the cockpit, they sound cool. So there's fuel being induced. We'll wait for the engine to stabilize at idle. There it is, close enough. Go back upstairs, rinse and repeat for the left engine. And again, no wait necessary. Flip it and roll it. This really has been a very awesome tutorial to build. It's required a lot of time. Like I said, there was a lot of really awesome information out there. It was hard to bring it all together and to ascertain what worked with a single flow. And it's been a challenge. A lot of documentation, a lot of videos, a lot of more documentation, trial and error, restructuring of the guide. It's been the hardest one I've done. I wouldn't say the hardest. It's been the most involved. All right, so we now have two engines at idle, basically. So now we can go to the before taxi checklist. So for the before taxi checklist, we're going to start by coming upstairs and turning off the APU. With the APU off, it will now come down to the anti-ice. Again, if you are in the icing conditions, which is 10 degrees Celsius with visible moisture, you would flip these actually to the on position. Remember that wing anti-ice does absolutely nothing while there's weight on wheels. So we could now go to the cancel recall. The only thing we should see is the TCAS off. Set our takeoff flaps, flaps 5. Okay. Zoom, zoom. All right, and you can also verify that you're at flaps 5 by checking out the ECAS. There's your flaps 5 indicator. And at this point, you would do a flight controls check. Full forward, full aft, left, and right. You want to do that very slowly. If you do it rapidly, you will shake the crap out of the aircraft. So now, moving up to our checklist. We're now at the before taxi checklist. So let's go ahead and step down there and see if there's anything that we've missed. Anti-ice is set. Recall was completed. Flight controls have been checked. Ground equipment is clear. So this would be after pushback. The safety or the bypass pin has been removed. The cart and tug has moved away, and you are safe to roll the aircraft out. So that is how we get the aircraft ready to roll. The next video, guys, will be the final one where we do taxi, takeoff, cruise, approach, or descent, approach, and landing, and shutdown. So the next one will probably be a little bit longer, but not too much, because most of that's going to be in the cruise. We're doing a short flight with this aircraft. We're just, well, shorter. We're doing LAX to Denver, so we're not going particularly far. I know it's a very short flight for an aircraft of this size, but the objective is to get you guys through the steps, get you comfortable before you start making those long hauls, and then, you know, have something go south. I hope you guys appreciate this. Again, if you guys are interested in supporting this guide or any of my other guides, this will be guide 12 on my Patreon site. And all of my guides are like this, very detailed, all have screenshots and everything that you need in them, including flight plans, charts. Everything that you need is in the guides to complete the flights as I have them here. So as always, guys, once again, I hope you enjoyed the video. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you in the next one.